There is much to learn.
Real quick, repeat the intro for the sake of the recording. So, um, we're here today. Sim's going to give us a lecture about doing hair and fur for creatures. Sim is actually an alumnus of the Arcane University and currently is working doing 3D art for, you said, Beyond Skyrim, Iliac Bay, as well as Morrowind. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I've officially
Excellent.
for Morrowind, but I've been doing stuff for Iliac Bay too, and this is one of the creatures that I made, or part of it at least.
Excellent. Well, head right into it. Guys, you'll see in the chat, I said if you have questions, you can certainly type them in the chat. No problem there at all. If you do want to unmute and ask a question in person, you can do that, but just kind of bear in mind the timing of when seems a good time to interrupt. Um, if anyone is making like loose mic sounds, I will be force muting you, but don't take that personal. It's just to make sure the lecture is actually can be clearly heard by everybody. All right, Sim, take it away.
Thanks. So I'm just gonna get started. Um, before I get into the hair part of stuff, I just want to real quick uh talk about finding references. Uh, it's really important to have like if you're even if you're not based on a real creature, you find something like similar to it and keep a reference open, especially for fur, because you can see that the you can like follow the lines on the fur here, and that's really useful when you're doing a groom. So actually what I like to do, I like to follow the lines to just give myself an idea of how the fur works, like the direction that it goes in. And I'll just like trace over like that a little bit just to get an idea on. Yeah, but let's just skip to this because um so right now I have a basic groom setup. I have a scalp, which is a UV unwrapped mesh. This is important. You need the UV to be unwrapped in order to get the fur to know where it is to stay to the mesh. And I already have curves attached, but if you haven't used the hair tool in Blender, you just click on your scalp, Shift A, curve, empty hair. And yeah, that's simple. So when so this method that I sort of pieced together was a little different. It's not because I was having trouble like figuring out exactly how to get hair from the hair curves to a texture. And this is the way that I do that. So I hope that maybe that could be helpful to someone else. So, but first thing you need to do, attach the curves and there, generate them. So when it says surface, you grab the scalp and there you go. Done, ship it. I'm gonna hide that for a sec. I have two materials on here. I have the base color material, which is this sketch of just where I want the colors to be, which the fur will read and display on it, which I think is pretty neat. Okay, I'm gonna real quick just drop that link, the link to the, or maybe, you know, why don't I drop the links at the end? Yeah. Okay, I have like plenty of sources to look through if there's more you want to learn about this. So materials, yeah. So you generate your fur. And what I like to do is I like to weight paint out where I don't want the fur to be. So you just, I don't know, like, I don't want fur here. I don't want fur here. Don't want it on the feet. And then open the curves. You go to density mask. And you type in the name of the vertex group. So I named the vertex group fur. You go to the curves and you press this little plus over here to switch to the text input and input fur. Right, so what else? We want the material. So this is kind of node magic. You select the hair material, and what it does is it reads this. It reads the color information on the texture map that you made. And let's make this a little more dense. And then it just copies the color information onto the hair, which I think is pretty neat. And the node tree looks something like this. Ignore these. And so I'm not. So the it reads the location of each point from the that's another thing working with hair curves is if you have a lot open at once like that, it will slow it down a little. So for the sake of brevity, I'm gonna just make it a little less dense. But yeah. So back here. You don't really want it like sticking out like this. Because you can it's just not really how fur works. So I'm gonna apply this. And don't worry about that. And shrink wrap it back to the scalp again. And this is where you just start brushing in the direction that you see over here on the fur in your reference. So I like to put on that and just doing this real quick to like
So
get
Sim,
the idea.
where did you get
Yeah.
that tool? That's the comb tool. How did you get access that tool? Oh, it's
The
in the end menu.
sorry.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, it's in order to edit the curves, you don't want to go to edit, you want to go to sculpt. And then you see the comb tool over here, which just lets you brush it.
That's really cool. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt, but I was not
No,
sure.
that's important. So sometimes I like to just have the overlays hidden so I can see what I'm doing a little better. Yeah, part's pretty relaxing. Mm. So, and usually around the mouth, it kind of like lies outward, like you can't really see. I'm not gonna go into layering for the sake of time, I suppose, but you don't want to just do this. I would, because the different parts of the creature is gonna have different kinds of hair on it. Like, I would make the face a lot denser than the rest of the body, and I would make the fur on the face shorter, which is typically the case with mammals.
Hello, I have a question. Sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I'm just sort of semi trying to follow along here. But I'm struggling to get. I've just got a little example mesh in Blender that I'm trying to put some hair onto, but
Mhm.
I don't seem to be able to get the comb tools to come up, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Do you, have
So
you got it separated? I've just got it as a, I think, as a modifier. Have you got it separated out as a separate mesh? Or something?
yes, yes, you have
Sorry, I might have
to.
missed a
Sorry, you
step.
have to apply it. Sorry.
Oh no, no worries. Thank you.
So here you apply it, and it instantiates the hair particles, and then you can brush it.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And that's
Okay. So yeah, you have a very basic broom here. The shrink wrap helps just keep it going in the flow of the body, and keeps it close to the scalp. You might want to add a little more texture. I'm gonna first just make the curves a little bit longer. I want to note that right now I'm in Skyrim's scale, not Blender's scale. Blender's scale is usually about 100 times smaller than this. But I decided to work in Skyrim's scale. I suppose it's simpler to not have to rescale it. You have to keep that in mind when you change the length of things. I usually turn off replace length when I'm doing trim hair curves, which can also be used to extend hair curves, which is what I'm doing now. But I usually turn off replace length and use the length factor to just get the hair a little bit longer. Because if I have longer hair on my creature, there's more I can do to like clump it, and it covers more as well. Although it's okay if you can sort of see through it, because we have the base texture to put it on top of once we bake it, which we are almost done. So maybe I want to add some texture. I'll just do basic. Where is it? Oh, I always like lose this because unlike the others, it has hair curves first and then noise, but just add a little bit of noise to it. That's too much noise. Just a little bit, just enough
very
to make
shaggy,
it like,
very shaggy boy.
just to make him a little bit fluffy, shaggy. He's probably not had a bath. Yeah, just adding a little bit of texture. Maybe I'll like add some clumps. Maybe add some clumps and curls. If you're not seeing the clumping, or this also happens with like curling, even braiding, anything that uses the guides, if you're not seeing anything show up, you uncheck existing guide. And in this case, we also want to, there. It's a little too much, but we can just lower the factor on that and just get like a little bit of clumping, a little bit of noise. And order does matter, so just play around with orders, see if which of these modifiers looks the best on it. And use even less noise. You don't really want much. If you have very short fur, you might not want that much stuff on top of it. You just want to maybe better use of time to just make sure that you are following the curves that the hair goes on that in your references on the reference animal. Anyway, that's a very basic run through of doing a fur groom.
Can I ask you another question, Sim?
Sure.
So you mentioned that if you wanted like the length of the fur to be a little different around the face versus the rest of the body, would you then make like two separate fur layers and just weight paint the parts that you wanted to use the different lengths on? Or how would you kind of make it different for
Yeah,
different parts?
something like that. Why don't I do that? I can do that really quickly. So I'm just really quickly gonna create a new vertex group and name it face. And maybe easier to just grab it in edit mode. There. Now it won't grab the eyes. And you gotta sign that. And Shift A, add another hair curve. Generate hair curves on the scalp. Then density mask that to face. And it's just on the face. And you can make this more dense if you'd like. And you want to apply that so you can start grooming it. And just
That's awesome. Thank you.
yeah, just yeah.
This is just so cool. I've never tried to make fur. I'm just fascinated. This is so cool.
Yeah, it's fun. Right. No, usually want to have symmetry on. Although it doesn't really matter it matters for the face though, for this one, I think, because generally you just have like half of them and the other half doesn't get textured. Like, see, this is only half of it. The other half is over here somewhere. About, see, so you move it over one square and then don't have to worry about this overlapping anything. It still gets this texture, but yeah. So and this one, I think we forgot to just pop that fur thing, and then you have the denser fur on the face and the more coarse fur on here. I'd also do like fluffy fur on the tummy and the tail. It's very basic. I'm gonna copy over stuff even. Just select that one, select this one, make sure this one's the lighter highlight than this. You just copy to selected. I'm not gonna use that one. You can see maybe I don't want that noise on it because it's shorter, so you might not want too much noise on it. Anyway, I'm going to unwrap it now, and I think this part's really neat. It's a geometry node setup that I can kind of explain. It looks for your UV and kind of just gets the UV. You add an offset to it if you want. You scale it up. In my case, I scaled it up 100, so it matches the Skyrim scale. And you get the position. This is pretty neat, using the mix color node to mix them and then turn it into color, mix them, and then turn it back into position data. I think that's pretty neat. You split the edges so it can unwrap and then get the UV, the position from the UV map, and apply it to this mesh. And what you get is this. Oh dear. Sometimes the hair will do stuff like this. But I think this unwrapped pretty well. Sometimes it'll disappear on its way over here, and you just need to select the curves, select the body, Control P, attach curves to surface, and that usually will fix whatever whatever your issue is with it being all over the place. Not really sure what that is. It's probably fine. So now for the baking part. I usually, and when I say bake in the context of fur, I really just mean rendering a picture. I like to use Eevee because it's shorter and you can still, it takes less time, but it still can look pretty good if you like play around with the ray tracing and such. I'm probably not going to go into that just for the sake of it not being so slow. But yeah, you can play around with samples, play around with fancy shadows, and make sure your curves are strip. And you might want to add some subdivisions. And in this case, looks like it might be a little bit. You might want it to be a little denser than that. Okay, to make it denser than that, actually, real quick, make sure you have film and transparent. That's important. They to get it a little thicker, you can generate interpolate, and you might need to put the density up a little bit before you start seeing things. And use the fur density mask. And it might be invisible, so you're gonna have to reattach the curves to the surface. Which sometimes helps. A lot of this is just waiting for it to load.
We have a question maybe you can answer in the meantime, Sim, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So Mr. K says, what does the film transparent do?
The film transparent makes sure that when you render the picture, instead of getting this gray background, you get a transparent background, so you can overlay it on a base texture. In this case, I'll probably just use the, oh dear. You need to be careful with density because sometimes 1000 is way too little and sometimes 1000 is way too much, and I think in this case it might be way too much. Okay,
You're making it think really hard.
yeah, I'm gonna yeah. This is the classic Blender experience.
Well, and it wouldn't be a live lecture if something didn't go wrong, right?
Yep.
Anybody have other questions in the meantime? Now's a
Yeah.
good chance.
I'm just gonna see if it's saved it back up. Otherwise, I can open a different version of this. But wait. Wait. Yes, please go. There we go. So, yeah. saved before that particular error. I'm gonna just save it real quick. Don't be me. Save often. I'm gonna actually get rid of the face curves just to slow down the to slow down render times and stuff. We'll start with a density of 1. And we'll just put that. That's something you need to keep in mind as well, is the face orientation. So this side has the back face on it, so it's gonna look very strange with the fur. So just gonna real quick hide the fur and fix that. So I'm gonna grab these, grab this, and move it over on the x-axis. And oh dear. You may want to reattach it. Wait. And you're good. Let's see how bad it... Nope, didn't mess up. See? So... yeah. But I wanted to just increase the density of this a little more. You want to go really bit by bit, maybe even set the hair curve profile. To be a little thicker. That's maybe too much. Just find a size that looks good and just do that, I guess. Just go up slowly and make sure that you don't do what I did and crash your blender. You can also put like half of it, make half of it visible. And that might let you go to higher densities without causing much of a problem. And I just real quick. So I would fix that and that a little bit. There's parts that I missed. But you would probably pay more attention to these parts. So rendering. For rendering, you need to make sure you have a light. I like to put a sun. And you're gonna want a new world as well, which you can get from I think documents. No. Where you have Blender installed, I'm using 4.2. Data files, Studio Lights World there. And just grab one of these and it'll illuminate this a little better. But these are the same as these. Or if you have your own environment file, you can also use that. But make sure it's illuminated, but not too much. And you want a camera. And right now it's in the default size. So you go to output, format, and change the resolution to whatever resolution that you want your texture to have. I usually, like when I'm absolutely certain that I have the groom that I want, I'll usually bake a 4096, even if I'm pretty sure the standard for Beyond Skyrim is 2048. Then it should be a square. Go to your camera, lens, go orthographic. And zoom out to basically whatever scale you put on the UV unwrap. So I did 100 because Skyrim's scale is kind of large. But whatever scale this is what you want your orthographic scale to be. And just move it so yeah, there. So these will be half the scale. So since it's at scale 100, it's centered at 50, 50, 50. Or, well, 50, 50. This Z doesn't really matter. As long as you're above it, it'll see the way that is here. So now they're good to render, which might take a little bit. Right there. Forgot to mention, you might want to turn off the camera on the body. I'm gonna turn it off on the face as well. Maybe a bad idea to drag this slider, just type in the number you want because it'll slow. There you go. So there's your fur. And you can just save as, I usually put a resources folder and then you can just put that into Substance Painter, put it on top of your base texture, and like you have fur. And if you spend a little more time getting the details, maybe put some ambient occlusion on it. But you can see the transparency. If you layer it on top of something, it's not gonna, this part won't cover it, which is pretty neat. Yeah. That's the main part.
That's really cool. So you would typically then combine this with the kind of main texture in Substance Painter?
Yeah. I usually use the texture I use for the scalp. I'll put this on top of it and like maybe color correct so there's a little more depth to it, because it can be very flat if you're not careful.
Do you ever like duplicate the mesh and make the fur as sort of a shell, an outer shell?
Oh, like shell texturing?
I guess. I don't know.
I
I've read
haven't.
just I've read just enough to not know anything.
I haven't done shell texturing. I personally don't like how it looks. Because it's a little shiny, I guess. I don't know. Unless you mean hair cards, which is what I want to just really quick go over next, because this is just your base. You want to do a little more, like, why not give this guy a mane? Bring that down a little bit. Yeah. So in the case of, like, if I were to give this guy a mane, I'll actually go into edit mode. And I want to point out something. Oh no. All right, we're good. So you can see this part is raised a little bit. I raised it so to help fill out the fur mesh that I put on top of it. And so you can grab this, duplicate it. That's another thing, is I usually will, once I have the base fur, I will, why don't I show you? When I have the base fur, usually, because that much fur will slow it down. I will save. I will make a new file. Append. And go to object, grab body, and there you have it without any of the curves, but it still has your UV unwrap on it. And now it's fast again. So you can grab that, duplicate, separate. Let me know if I'm going too fast. I'll like find some vertices that I don't particularly like and dissolve them. And then this is important, is you don't want it to be sticking out. By the way, I want to give a shout out to Devasa, I think is how it's pronounced. They're they're with Iliac Bay. They helped me figure out a lot of the hair card stuff. And one of the things that they recommend was making sure that it's like not on top, not sticking out, but lying against. Mirror just to preview it. You don't really want the mirror to appear in your render, so you click the camera. Just generally with Blender, if you click the camera, it won't render, which is pretty nice. And also in this case, you won't see it, you have it hidden, but it will render, which is also pretty neat. Yeah. And then you have a new scalp, and I'll name this main. And what I did for the hyena is I separated it and moved it over here. What I probably should have done, and recently kind of figured out, is this is how this might be what Sarah was talking about. Where which is how it's done with like the wolves and stuff in Skyrim. Is you make the fur and put the UV on top of the other fur and you just blend it in. And since we're blending it, well, first I want to just make it a little bit taller. Whoop. Make it a little taller. And add our hair. Add our profile. And also, since you made a new thing, you're gonna have to change this back to 2048. Another thing you can do is just make a copy of it and delete everything that you don't need. You want to go back to film, make sure transparent's ticked, make sure curve is strip, and you have a subdivision if you want. Make sure it's all set up. Yeah. Now you can add your curves. In this case, though, I'm not going to generate it. I'm not going to generate any hair curves instead. I'm going to use the add button and just, it's interesting. Sometimes you gotta reattach the curves to the surface. Also make sure that they're the right length, maybe. Since this is a main, you might want it to be a little longer. It's probably too long, but you can shorten it. And for the main, what I did is I just kind of super mohawk time. And what you can do. Also, this will enable collision and make sure that it doesn't clip into the mesh as much, which can be pretty useful. Also, you can switch from sphere to projected. Projected means that everything that you see will get moved. Sphere means that only in the radius. I have projected on. And you can use the grow shrink tool. I always have it on shrink because I'm usually shrinking hair more than I'm growing it. So you can even hide that if you want, but I'm gonna keep it visible for now. But you have this sort of sparse line around the edges, and you can curve interpolate length if you want it to stay the same length as this, and interpolate shape if you want it to stay in line with it, which is what I usually do. Just fill that out. Maybe put like a shorter kind of hair underneath. Yeah. You can use the density brush. Well, in this case, it's not interpolate length and shape, and there you go. It'll just fill out all the spaces. And you actually don't want all the spaces filled out, but I like to start with a lot and then decrease the amount. Now, you might want to also append the material, the fur material. And as you can see, the spots are getting kind of interpolated up there. I mean, sort of. I don't know. Don't know if that was the right word. I think in this case, you might want to edit the texture, the base texture a little bit. So so this is a little smoother, but for the sake of time, this is probably fine. And you have this kind of wispy mane. Maybe you don't want to shrink wrap on this one because you want it like sticking up, flowing. Yeah. And try clumping. And then put a curl on top of that, maybe. But I'm going to do a whole curl. Factors what I was looking for. Just to like give it a little more interest. Yeah. Don't worry about it being like too thin. You actually want it to be thin because of the way that we try to blend it into the map. I'm going to just kind of try clumping some of these together a little bit to give it like a more feathered end so it blends into the base a little better. Oh. Might want to, you might not want it to be that extreme, but so maybe you want a little less curl, a little less clump. Yeah. Don't worry about it only being on one side, because you only need one side. At least in the case of when you have half of the UV map and you're only texturing half the UV map. There's some noise on there. I can find it. And just experiment with textures. This plagues me. Usually fiddling around fixes it. If it says this, that means that it's having a little bit of trouble figuring out where the curves are on the mesh, which usually happens if you move the UV, but sometimes it'll just happen. So you sometimes want to have the mirror off. So I think in this case we want the mirror off completely. And that should fix it. There we go. So we don't need that. And now you unwrap this. gonna just grab the camera and lights. Yeah. So you might want this to be a little shorter because you can see it's going off the edge of the texture UV square a little bit. Although I don't think you can. What you can do, actually, you can open a second one, and you can view it like that while you fix it here. The brush shrink tool. There you go. Looks pretty good. And there's another one up here that's on the neck part. I just want to. And you see these little specks of stubble are ends of hair that have shrunk that you no longer need, so you can just delete them. Yeah. And so that's pretty good. So you'd render this as well. Maybe we need a better light on here. Maybe not that much. In there, that would render faster. I want to show also the like blending them together. I think I'll use where would it I'll use this that I exported. Let's use the tutorial for wrong one. Okay, so this is the hair cards that I ended up making for the hyena. But let's use our fur that we made. Just gonna make the scales match. That's the wrong. There. And you can see that, well, so I have this here, which is a card that I haven't blended. This is a card that I want to blend, and can't really see them, which is what you want. But there's also these cards here that I made that are like little tufts of fur. You can see that they're very wispy, especially the top part is feathered, and this helps it blend better with the fur. Like you can barely see it. So let's just use ours. There. So ours might need a little more blending. But you can color correct it. So a thing to note about making like wispy fur is that Skyrim doesn't really do wispy. You can't really have this sort of gray transparency. It has to be either 0 transparent or 1 opaque. And that's something you can just do in the NIF. Why don't I open the final NIF so to show what I mean. So you see the it's not wispy here. This is either 0 transparent or 1 opaque. And the alpha property I use is this one, which is disabling blending, because when a blended mesh overlays another blended mesh, you get transparency issues. So you want testing and play around with the test threshold to, let me show how that affects it. So as you go up, less and less will be visible, and as you go down, all of it will be visible. One last important thing. When you are blending these together, and you probably will have a finished texture that you're overlaying this on top of, not just the hair. You want to put the opacity down. And don't worry about this being invisible, because this doesn't have an alpha property on it. So it ignores the alpha and just displays the color. And that's how you can blend this stuff into it. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's all I had. Is there any questions?
It's great. I love this hyena. He's so cute. We're waiting for
Thanks.
his grand reveal, which I'm hoping you guys will do that in like one of the showcase on the community outpost.
Yeah, that would be fun.
You guys have any questions? It was really awesome. I love to see all the cool techniques. And I think you said there were some links you'd put.
Yeah, let me just grab those real quick.
Okay, awesome. Questions from you guys? We're a quiet bunch today.
Should I throw that in the chat or in the study hall chat or lecture hall chat?
Whichever
I'll
one
throw it
is
in lecture hall chat.
okay, sure. I was gonna say whichever's easier for you because we can always copy it into a different channel as well.
Yeah. So this one is
I see your question there, Mr. K. We'll give Sim just a moment to finish her train of thought, and then we'll come back to this.
yeah. So the video I just linked is it's just the shader that I used that reads the color information on the texture underneath and transmits it to the fur, which I think is pretty neat. And then there's this, which isn't a video, it's a Stack Exchange post. And that is the geometry nodes that explains better what's going on in them. And why don't I also make the another note, I like to number mine and just count up. You see some repeats, don't worry about it. But just to make sure that every time I hit a milestone or change something big, that I can go back. And in this case, I was actually switching a lot between the fur-bake grooming and assembly part, just kind of moving assets back and forth between the three, which is pretty cool that you can do that. So I'm going to say this is a 1. And I'm going to drop the first one. I'm just going to drop that in chat.
Awesome, thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
Is it an
So
add-on that gives you all the options for the hair and all the things, or is that actually built in part of Blender?
that's built in.
Wow, very cool.
I'm fairly certain you don't need to look in the add-ons. I'm gonna take a quick look just in case you do. But I think that it's in the base program. But yeah, that's pretty simple. You just
Can we ping you if we're playing around with this later and get stuck?
oh, totally. Yeah, I'd be happy to help out.
Maybe I'll go
Yeah,
ahead and
just
sorry.
sorry.
You finish what you're saying, then I was going to go to the question we have.
Okay, just quick recap. To add curves to a mesh, first make sure you've UV unwrapped it to where you want it to be, because moving around the UVs afterwards is kind of a little tough. Then select your mesh, Shift A, curve, go to curve, go to empty hair, white, grab the wrong one, curve, empty hair, and go into sculpt mode, and you can just bring. Sorry, what was the question?
No, that's I was just it's just amazing what you can do with these tools. All right, so Mr. K says, is it possible to give the fur a different color or texture than the one that's underneath?
Yeah, absolutely. You can just put a different, like that's what I did for the main on this guy. It's actually a separate shader. You just select it. You can go into shading. Let's just create a new one from scratch. Don't use that because it'll be weird and shiny. I just do like a diffuse. Whatever color you want it to be. Let's make this guy punk. And maybe not so punk. All right. Yeah. You generally want to be less saturated than you think you should be, and I think the tip is less saturated than you think it should be and dirtier than you think it should be.
Oh yeah, Skyrim loves its dirt.
All right, yeah. So you can have it looks pink, but try to match it. Also, you put a color ramp and some curves info. You can grab the intercept, put it there, duplicate this, or actually let's just do random. Duplicate this, we'll make it a little darker and a little more saturated. And add a mixed color shader and put that into the factor. And you get random, you get a more random detail. I thought that was kind of neat. So yeah, as opposed to just flat this, which is a little more realistic. There's a lot of stuff you can play around with the stuff you get here in a color ramp. That's a little bit beyond the scope of this. Any other questions?
Anybody? Feel free to come off of mute if you want, or type a question in the chat. Don't be shy.
I just also drop in a basic Eevee hair shader that I based mine on. Pretty good. Also, this guy has some pretty good tutorials. He shows you some fun things with color ramps. Starting darker on the roots and getting lighter, although in the case of a wild animal, you might want to start lighter on the roots and get darker, or darken the roots, then light, then dark again, because oil and dirt and stuff sticking to the end.
Great. All right. Well, if no one has any other questions, then I think we can call it there. But I thought this was an awesome lecture. So cool to see the things you can do. I'm not sure how many folks have tried to tackle hair or fur before. I know it's challenging, so it's really great to see some ways that we can make this happen. really appreciate you doing this for us, Sim, and appreciate your willingness to let us ping you later because I have a feeling you may get a few hits on that.
Thanks for letting me do this. This was fun.
It was great, yeah. So hoping we can do a follow-up at some point. There's a lot to learn about making creatures, and we don't see many many lectures on this, so that'd be great.
Yeah, maybe.
This,
Probably.
assuming I didn't flub up this recording, this should be available at some point later on the YouTube site as well for you guys to get a recap.
There is much to learn.